Fantastic. So another episode of our AI adoption in the built environment, which we're doing in producing in partnership with the Red Foundation, who are a not-for-profit organisation focused on how data is used within the built environment. So looking at ways we can improve that data usage. But one of their areas specifically is AI, and obviously it's the hot topic of the moment. And I've got a fantastic guest with me today, Firoz from Built AI. So it'd be great for you, Firoz, if maybe you could give me a quick introduction of yourself and actually tell me a little bit more and the viewers a little bit more on where Built AI fits into the real estate ecosystem and what role it plays, value, and that sort of stuff. It'd be great to get that understanding.
Yeah, happy to. So thanks for having me on, Alex. So I'll start with myself. So my background before Built AI was about 13, 14 years in financial services, largely in banking. I worked at NatWest for a majority of that. There I spent initially a lot of time as a more traditional banker, and then the last sort of 6, 7 years building out different digital products for the bank. Everything from small business to mortgages to property to working capital, all sorts. And the key thing that kind of underpinned all of that, well, they were all really traditional markets that were all driven by networks of people, a lot of manual processes, a lot of paperwork, a lot of industry that needed change, and kind of spent a lot of time sort of modernizing and transforming a lot of those spaces. And I was on the co-founder of Built AI along with my co-founder Natan, and he's spent the last 10, 11 years in real estate. So more sort of feeding the problem that we've been going after in the last few years. Built AI, what we do, we help commercial property investors or brokers, advisors, analyze buildings to buy or to scenario plan and manage their existing portfolio assets as well.
Amazing. Yeah, so how did the idea come about then? You mentioned Natan as your co-founder as well, and he's more real estate focused, your finance background. Yeah, tell me a bit more how it came about and that sort of stuff and the role you play.
Yeah, so we both arrived at the same outcome, but perhaps with slightly different journeys. So Natan felt the problem as in the real estate market, underwriting deals, looking at buildings, and being very sort of in the weeds of that and realizing how it shouldn't be the case given the amount of technology and the progresses of AI and things at the time. And then my background was, my story was that for the last 5 years before this, I'd spent so much time in industries that all had the same underlying problem. The process was very manual and very slow, and technology could play a huge part in unlocking that to kind of make move much faster, but also get to much more accurate, detailed, better decisions all the way through. And real estate was the biggest market, and also amongst the earliest, like in an adoption perspective, as in there's a lot of adoption still to come. So from our perspective,
yes, it's really quite immature in that respect. Yeah,
exactly, really exciting, but also really like a great market to get into. So we met Natan and kind of shared this ambition. It kind of fit really well.
Yeah. So for people watching, I mean, obviously, so your clients or the companies you're dealing with, maybe wanting to assess the the potential investments and that sort of stuff, and they would traditionally spend a lot of time doing that quite manually.
Yeah.
And so Built AI plugs in there and utilizing AI technology, fittingly for this topic, and speeds up that process and enables them to get to the more accurate and faster results. Is that correct?
That's perfect. Our clients are typically we help them in 2 places. So either to screen and underwrite new investment opportunities or to scenario analyze the existing portfolio. So if you have, say, 10, 20, 100 buildings and you want to annually appraise or business plan or support valuations and all the analysis behind that. But our core part, the first part we started with, was investment underwriting and screening. And that's, as you said, typically deals start with a brochure, a PDF, or an Excel file somewhere. Typically, we hear it takes between 3 hours and a few days to get to any level of analysis. And we hear even to start that work, it takes perhaps several days to find the 3-hour window to even do the work. So actual time between you receive something and you have something ready is often a week. And with the platform, all you have to do is upload the document, and 30 minutes later, you get a link. You access that. It takes 5 minutes to analyze a deal. And so it means you can analyze almost everything. And you can go really in depth. You can go as in depth as investment committee level analysis in just like in 10, 20 minutes. So the power is there. And yeah, it's been really exciting to build it.
Excellent. Oh, it sounds really cool. And you know, like you mentioned, it's real estate world being quite early in its adoption, the digital transformation. You know, that I think there's a lot of opportunities out there in lots of different aspects of the built environment where this type of technology can really will have a massive impact. Um, I mean, on that sort of topic, I mean, looking at AI specifically, what do you think, you know, is the current state of AI adoption within the real estate investment world? And what further opportunities do you see?
I think it's really early. I think there's a lot of excitement, but it's really early. I think firms are fully aware that they have to evolve with new technology. I think the generative AI sort of launch from ChatGPT, etc., 18 months ago changed that narrative really positively. But I think firms are still trying to figure out how and where it helps them. I think there is a skepticism around that, because I think firms have had issues in the past where they bought technology and it hasn't worked for them. It hasn't benefited them. And so they're kind of unsure. They know where they have to go, but they're unsure always of the path of how to get there and what it looks like. And so we think that's a very normal human sort of position for the industry to be in. So that's how we approach the market, is kind of how we help firms rather than just sell them technology, because it's not by itself ready perhaps sometimes to as an industry to just sort of click and start, but more kind of how
They
we
can
help.
go in. Yeah, and I think maybe there's some businesses may have had their fingers burnt in the past where, you know, they promised the moon and, you know, and it doesn't materialize, or the, you know, this is a one, you know, and the AI has that feeling about it as well, a little bit like, you know, it's going to fix everything and it's amazing. And all you got to do is plug it in and off you go. And obviously there's a lot more to that. And actually, once you start trying to utilize the AI technology and, you know, and I'm sure loads of people are doing that out there with ChatGPT in the general in their days. But then you start going, well, I can see the potential, but
Yeah,
how do we actually do it? And then you start trying to get into it. Oh, actually, there's quite a few hurdles here. How do I start aligning it? And I think maybe a lot more businesses are at that stage now where there's sort of that the excitement is there still, but it's like, you know, really seeing the real, how do we do this? So, you know, what do you think are the main challenges when incorporating AI into workflows, Firoz? You know, processes, organizations, you know, how do you address such risks as data quality,
yeah.
trust, transparency?
I think there's a few points there. One is, it always helps to start with a business goal in mind. So either we want to, expand the territories we're looking to invest in, we're looking to grow revenue by this much, we're looking to open up this new sector. There's almost a kind of a North Star of like, I have a
Yeah,
problem as a company that I want to solve, and how do I go and solve that problem? How do I get better at doing X or Y, whatever it may be. And once you have those goals, you start to have like a measure of the return on investment, which is kind of what eventually what everyone needs. And so we always sort of start with our clients to understand what they're trying to achieve, where their challenges are today in doing so, and then how does the technology and the platform help them do that. I think the secondary point around is on data quality is there as well, which is often firms have a lot of information, and they've been collecting this perhaps for decades, perhaps. I met a client a couple of weeks ago who have information about almost every deal in their sector over the last 20 years, and it's great, but they have almost no way of accessing it because over
yeah,
the years, like it's in shared drives and different places, and so they have all of it, but they have no way of harnessing it.
segmented properly and it's not tagged up in the right ways or whatever. Like tradition, if you're using traditional tech to try and get at it.
Exactly. So what we advise clients is, we can help you kind of bring some of that data in, but also start going forward, start having it in the right way. So every document that's analyzed on a platform is saved forever for you, and only for you as a firm. But you can start to organize it much easier without having to figure out where it is, and there's experts who know where X document might be, etc. So kind of having that all in sort of at least in an organized way on platform is helpful. The point about
Like a single source of truth type of thing for us. So it's sort of your one
exactly.
place to go.
Exactly, and like automatically store, because the big issue I think we find in real estate is that if you the work moves so fast that if you add any tool that makes it slower for you to operate, it's not going to be adopted, because there was a way to do something, it was faster. It might be why would I go back? So the way we've always designed this is we focus very heavily on the end user. So whether it's the developer, the investor, the broker, the advisor, etc., and how do you make their lives from the moment you first log in better, so they get value the moment you first interact. And so we get the buy-in for why X and Y should happen afterwards, because from day one their life should be better. And the flip side though is, as a firm, to get the maximum value out of technology, you have to be open to changing your process. Because if you have an X process and you want to buy a tool to make it slightly faster, that won't get you the benefits you may be looking for, because unless you're open to changing the process. So as an example, what more than a third of our clients use the platform now, not just to analyze a deal, but also present to investment committee. And it's because the investment committee used to ask questions, or clients used to ask questions which they couldn't answer on the fly, but now they can. They have the confidence to do so. And so the process becomes much more interactive rather than like submission and discussion. And so that evolves over time, but the more open you are to kind of leveraging it to your own benefit, your own way, the more successful I think firms will be in adopting any new technology.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is exciting. I find that particularly exciting when you look at, you know, you've got AI, and originally, so initially you go, okay, let's just get it to do what we already do in this way, and then you go, hang on a minute, it doesn't need to do it like that. We could let's rip all that up and start again using this capability, and you do it a different way. And actually, like you say, you can be interactive and have, it doesn't have to you condense a process that originally was much longer, and it's having that open-mindedness of approach. And
Exactly.
I suppose taking some advice externally as well, if you're, from people who know the capabilities of the technology, I suppose, and having that open mind to go, okay, yeah, how can we do this differently that will be so much better?
Exactly. So our approach with any new client, small or large, is a very consultative, where the first few months of working with us, we have someone attached to the firm to make sure we help them understand the process and see how we can evolve within that. Because like there's just not been that much great new tech in this in our space for a long time. So it's very hard. It's quite a what's the word, an old-fashioned process that's been there for a long time. So evolving that, we do our best to kind of help clients through, but most clients find that like are really excited by it as well, because it's a way to improve performance.
Yeah, do you think traditionally we've had been very slow at adopting or going through the digital transformation, adopting new technology within real estate, which might be a little bit to do with it being quite, there's lots of different maybe regional challenges or different rules or regulations depending on the region you're in, and so nothing could scale very effectively, and maybe the AI's capability and also its adoption in the wider world, that we're using ChatGPT to pick our movies or help us make a dinner or something, that sort of cultural change as well, where the expectation is there, will that help the whole real estate world to go through that digital transformation that hasn't really done properly? It's sort of bouncing around the edges, but it's not nearly as deep as it would be in many other sectors.
I think one of the challenges real estate has, because it historically used very little technology in the processes, is that everyone or many firms or many users or clients have different ways of saying the same thing. And what
Yes.
that means is that they have slightly different ways of doing the same thing, which then means like, well, every deal is different, every user is different, every client is different. But when you underpin, and so that makes it really hard to kind of get deep into, a market-wide adoption. But our analysis is that when you take it back a level, they're all about 90-95% the same in our space. And so what we want to create is a thing where we provide the 90%, and we create a space for firms to figure out to customize their own version of the last 5-10, because there's good reasons why they're different. They're not every deal shouldn't be exactly the same as the other. So how do we enable users to kind of bespoke and create the unique thing that's required in that particular analysis or building or deal without losing the consistency that comes with having a software? A great example, one of our clients said that when they have a German building and a UK building, the same metric means something different in Germany and the UK. So they've had examples where investment committee, the interpretation of the metric was incorrect and kind of caused a bit of confusion in meeting. So those are sort of things that are very, very avoidable, but can cause quite a lot of delay and issues because it's not the same everywhere. So the way we try to solve that is by being really clear and transparent about what something is, and giving even the IC member the ability, or the managing partner the ability to go and understand the depth without having to read a huge Excel document or a big memo, etc. It's kind of having that transparency built in. And it's still a journey to go around kind of the full adoption of that. But I think the more transparency there is, the more you could enable uniqueness and bespoking of a lot of deals, because everyone can understand it really, really fast. And then we can add things like agents and things on top of that to kind of make it even easier and faster to move. But I think AI is getting to that space where regional differences, asset differences, they're getting narrower because that difference in terminology goes away.
Yeah, the AI has that capability, doesn't it, to sort of go, okay, that means that there, that means this here. We can flex with that. On a broader sense, actually, Firoz, I'd be interested to get your thoughts, or highlighting some of the more exciting AI applications you've seen in the built environment, other than built AI, obviously. But
outside of our sort of our space, I think I've seen some really interesting things in like architecture and space design. And I remember seeing a firm called Layout in a conference last year, and they were really strong. I saw a few firms in the past around like having to take space, almost measuring space using sensors and tools that was which previously was, I believe, physically measured and took like days and weeks to do. And they just put a camera out and kind of automatic do so. It was incredible. And you could kind of see how I think the energy efficiency space and sensors around and measuring kind of ways to improve that is good for everyone. Good for you, good for tenants, good for owners, good for the community. I think it's a really interesting, some really interesting stuff. I think really early on, when I looked at PropTech, there's I think it's a joint venture called View City, and kind of how it portrays like the skyline and things. And it's just amazing. So some of the property is such a fascinating space. So there's so many use cases around it. I think from a technology perspective, there's some really interesting stuff out there. I think the key to all of it is just how does it unlock commercial benefit for the customer. And I think those are things where technology can be great, but it's got to have an outcome. And so I'm very hopeful more and more tools like that will start to do that.
Excellent. And how do you see that evolving over the next sort of 5 to 10 years? What's like the big blue sky things? I won't hold you to this, Firoz, but we'll come back in 10 years ago.
I'm very excited by the rise of like AI agents, because if I think of like the biggest change the last 15-20 years in technology, it was like the iPhone, the mobile phone, and
Totally.
what you can do with the mobile phone. And and suddenly from like, I don't know, 2008, where there was like early iPhones, to 2012, where there were like apps and huge amounts of function that was just available on your phone. I think AI agents can have a similar level of transformation where
Mm.
back then you can't remember why you ever did certain things in a
Mm.
different and so I think AI agents is incredibly valuable because it allows the individual, so in this case the real estate investor, broker, developer, to be able to focus on what they're really strong at, and to help firms differentiate by their nous, by their knowledge, by their experience, and enable everything else to be handled again in a very custom way for them, because the agents can be, like a staff member, they could be tailored and trained to what you want them to do, not just what, the creator wants them to do. And so I think that's really interesting because it allows people to be themselves and to kind of focus on their own strengths and differentiate more, which means they can win more deals, they can create better plans, strategies, and eventually I think as a real estate professional, what's it called? What I call be more real estate, doesn't have more like passion and focus on the actual property and the strategy and the implementation of that, rather than everything else that's required to enable that to happen.
Mm. I mean that I agree. I think it's really fascinating at the impact that those sort of AI agents will have, and and I suppose leading on to my next question, people are worried about what that might mean for jobs and my job, or is the AI agent who can work through the night forever and 30, 365 days a year, are they going to take my job? So what do you think about that? What impact will AI have on roles within the field?
I think it'll have a very big impact, but I don't think it'll be on an overnight basis. I think like in many industries, it'll unlike the mobile phone again, it'll have an impact. Over 10 years, you can look back and think, wow, how did I used to do this way? But on a week by week, month by month basis, you won't notice it as much. And
Mm.
but it'll be tasks and things like creating documentation, analyzing data coming in. A lot of things that are currently manually done, but are those things will start to become connected and much easier to do. I think the high value tasks around like analysis and interpretation, decision making will still be there, but there's a lot of decisions in real estate are high value decisions,
Hmm.
high impact, high monetary value, and high risk as a result. And
Mm.
I think it's really positive to have more insight around and to
Totally.
help people conviction. So I don't think the from an investment management broker advisor space, I'd be too worried about the overall number of jobs. I'd be looking at sort of how do those roles change? Because I think earlier adopters will start to kind of change a lot of those processes. And so the type of people we want and the skill set we want in 10 years' time will be quite different. But on a year by year basis, I think it's a really good opportunity for the guys in the market right now to evolve that way, uh,
Yeah,
and lead the way.
there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity there. What do you think will those more human skills, where is that emphasis going to be? Is it back to, I can imagine, with the invent of more automation, more marketing, there's like more noise.
Yeah,
I've had phone calls from AI bots talking to me about something or other. I can't remember, but I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't AI, this isn't the person.
yeah.
And will that can become more, more and more companies will be doing it, and then we'll be bombarded by it.
Yeah.
Is that and then it'll be like, oh, I'm actually talking, is this really for us I'm talking to, or is it an AI
I,
generated version of him?
I had a really good example last week. So Klarna, the buy, pay and buy in three installments of a company,
Yeah.
um, they were really early adopter in generative AI, and they said they had let go a huge number of staff to as part of that because of that. What they then decided last week was that one of the biggest drivers of customer advocacy was the ability to speak to a human really fast. And so they went the other way now of saying, okay, so when someone calls, you got to be able to speak to a human really fast, because that's what drives engagement back to the product. That's what it's not about getting your question answered. It's about speaking to someone so you can make sure they understand the
And
question and get through it.
empathy, and yeah.
Exactly. And so I think the if you look back over the decades of like the highest customer engagement advocacy firms, like John Lewis and Lush and various things, they're all driven by like the service by humans and to address problems. What I think was really powerful though is if I put that example into like into working life, if you think of like a hotel concierge, if you went if you booked a expensive room somewhere and he came down and said, "Oh, can you help me buy some tickets?" and some AI agent gave you some four options to choose from, you probably wouldn't think that's a very good service because you can go. But if someone understood the question as a concierge and then sent you a link with four different options that may fit you, the times, the dates, to help you figure out what's the right one to choose, that's not a very good service. And they're very similar, but just
the
one
outcome's the same.
exactly. But it's just one is much more human centric.
Yeah, what's the feeling?
Exactly. So I think that's what's gonna separate this is how do you, if you're still selling to humans, then how do you connect to the human? And the more noise there is, the harder it is to connect via like electronically. In that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm really fascinated to see how it develops. Um,
Deciding that, I think as a result, that the real estate as a market being very people-based, network-based, will
of
only
course.
might amplify. It'll only get more and more that way because there'll be more and more tools, more information, but you'll trust your trusted advisors more and more as a result.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you see like in the wider society, fake news and loads of unverified data and facts, and you don't know what's true and what's not, and it's a bit like, oh my God. So that if I got someone who I trust, who I can go, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
You've got I trust your opinion. I want that, and I value that. The value of that's going to be even greater,
yeah.
and that human contact and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, um, Firoz, what are there any ethical or practical considerations people should keep in mind when adopting AI technologies?
I think you should always keep in mind where data is held, stored, how it's used. You should openly ask those questions so you have clarity of what's going on. I think also you should think about sort of how this is used in 4 or 5 years' time. So what do I mean by that? If you're using a platform to I don't know, record sales calls so you can then figure out what's the right messaging around that or something. That's really powerful. But then how do you scale that? So you suddenly have a lot of information you store that's personal. And so how do you then manage that, store that, comply with laws that are there today, but hard to kind of see what tomorrow might be. So
Mm.
I think it's kind of having it in mind of like what is the goal you're trying to achieve? What's the best, what can go wrong? And just keeping that close to mind. But the around sort of AI as a whole, around like the agents and various things, I would just be really, really clear that we know be tested rigorously and that you keep in mind sort of what you're trying to achieve and think about what we call the unhappy paths. So the things that could occur, but is unlikely, but could occur. And so you should, and anyone you work with as a vendor, as a supplier, to kind of build the credibility they've been in the space before, how they operate, test with them, be open-minded, collaborate. And I think a lot of this goes away with collaboration. The and just being thoughtful about kind of the any risks you may see in any application.
Yeah, I think you think of people putting all the company information to ChatGPT or whatever, just when they're trying to use it themselves, and there's I imagine there's a lot of risk of leakage there within organizations, just because people will go, okay, I'm just going to take that data and stick it over here. Probably a lot of education that needs to happen in that respect as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. So it's like exactly what you said. So if you take all your company information that those 20 years of brochures that I mentioned before, if you put them all into ChatGPT, if you have the wrong version of ChatGPT may not own that data. So there's a degree of being aware of what you're signing into, and but equally as such, like work like more industry focused firms being clear kind of how data is being used, because the more you are concerned about that, the more you find any issues you may be there, because AI is still quite early, and the ethical elements, people are very aware of them. I think it's just kind of how do you navigate them in each application you're looking at. That's
Yeah.
considering.
No, fair play. Final question, Firoz. What advice would you give others in your field who are looking to expand or explore and expand their use of AI? I mean, you're obviously an expert in the area, so it'd be really good to get your input.
I think it's have a business goal in mind, because eventually for something to work, it has to achieve a business outcome. And the second thing is have a really open-minded version to test and to see, but the test against is that outcome achieved, as opposed to like, is it perfect for everything else? Because any new technology will not be perfect. It'll have things you need to change, update, feedback, etc. But if you don't have the mentality to try and to test and to take a bit of risk in that regard, that's one element. And the second element is that having a business outcome in mind, because where we see things not work the best is when people are excited, but they don't know what success looks like. And so it's really hard then to succeed in any exercise if you don't know what the goals are. So I think
yeah, if you don't know where you're going,
companies meet to so much excitement, and it's hard to get there. So I think if you have that sort of trying mentality, the testing mentality, to kind of appreciate that failure and mistakes is part of the game, is part of the approach. But so if you fail a couple of times, it's okay. But you also have to have. But if you get the wrong goal in mind, if you don't have a goal in mind, it's hard to get there. The analogy I'd use, it took 4 or 5 years for us in fintech to be able to figure out like how to test well and how to build that mentality, etc. It took a long time. But PropTech and real estate firms have the benefit of having seen those other industries kind of evolve to be able to learn from that. And the biggest thing was just learning to test, learning to try, without having all the pressure of everything having to succeed every time.
Yeah, that's good advice. And looking at those, looking at the other industries that are a bit further ahead in that respect, in terms of that adoption, digital transformation, and then obviously AI having that the current craze, makes loads of sense. So, but brilliant, Firoz, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thanks for all the insight.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.